And we are live from Orlando, Florida at 21 Studios Global Command. I'm Anthony Johnson, founder and CEO of 21 Studios, hosting today's episode number 9 of the Redman Group on 21 Live. Today I'm joined by Rollo Tomasi, the Rational Male, Ryan Stone, and Married Red Pill, Pat Campbell, radio host and podcast host out of Oklahoma, and Carl from Destabilizing. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me.
Good to be here.
Thanks for having us again.
Hell yeah. So let's kind of go through the roundtable. What do you guys got going on? I've been kind of out of the loop over the past week moving around Orlando. Rollo?
Basically, I have been working on book 4 a little bit more. I have a series of posts that I'm working on right now. Really, they're kind of heavy stuff, so I'm kind of taking my time with them. They're cognitive processes, and I'm trying to really investigate how these cognitive processes affect or are, how they relate to red pill awareness and how they relate to just intersexual dynamics. And I've broken them down. They're pretty basic. They're pretty simple. When you think about it, there's just instinct, emotion, and reason. And I'm going through each one of these sort of systematically and really investigating how they affect, men and women I'm trying to, like I said, I'm trying to relate it to be a little bit more intersexual dynamics wise, but really the cognitive processes and just my thoughts on that. And then just working on the book really, and then doing some, live appearances like this. I've been doing a few of them around. And then of course I'm going on with Pat Campbell on last Friday anyways, but at least once a week we get together and we talk. And I think it's becoming a pretty popular segment on your show, Pat.
Absolutely, yeah. My job is to bring the red pill to the masses in terrestrial radio. I started, reading a lot of Rollo's stuff. I think I bought the second book first, and then I got the first book and the third. Brought him on the radio, and I think he's got a great message. I think you guys are sort of aimed. Your core demo is probably men 20 to 40, and I see some broader applications for Rollo. I sort of tempered the language and brought him to terrestrial radio, bringing him on my local program on a regular basis, talking about issues like this week. We talked about, there was a story out there about a guy who went on a date with a woman, just one date, and she didn't return his text messages. So he sent her an invoice for the date. So we talked about the sexual dynamics there. That created a lot of controversy on Twitter. We got into the Starbucks deal. He's also been talking about people apologizing, whether it be Laura Ingraham or Tony Robinson, and why you should never apologize. And when you do, it's never enough. They just want more. Sometimes I sit in for some nationally syndicated guys, like when I sit in for Todd Schnitt, I bring Rollo on. And times like that, he's like on 65 stations that have never heard the red pill message. So that's sort of how I envision bringing you guys on board, because there's a whole world out there that hasn't heard this message, and it's important, and I want to get a broader audience.
Cool. Hell yeah. Ryan, Carl, anything new with you guys lately?
Yeah, we just rolled up on week 3 of our 60 Days of Dread. This one here, we just finished off husbandry, hygiene, all the basics, covering the ground. Next week, we're hitting up style and how to dress like you give a fuck. As for me personally, just finished writing something actually attached to 21 convention. I remember when I gave that speech, I told guys I wasn't there to tell them what their path was or their mission. And then that was the first 3 questions I got was, what should I use for my rite of passage? Best answer I can come up with was sex and violence. So it's a big, long slog of a read. And between those 2 things, it's just daily grind, nothing super fancy, just sticking to the basics and doing them often.
Ryan, I actually wanted to ask you, I noticed that Reddit finally wrote out a whole new platform, basically, a whole redesign. You're a moderator at both Married Red Pill and the Red Pill, I believe. Has that affected you guys on the back end, causing problems or anything?
Oh, thank God. Oh, they have been. Ever since they put that new moderator website on there, it's fucked up mobile. So I have to go onto a desktop to do anything. So if I get messages, it just slows down the time when we get rid of trolls. But yeah, we can still turn it off in the meantime. So as long as the mobile apps catch up to it, then we'll be fine.
Carl, any new blog posts lately? I think I read one recently. It was pretty new.
Yeah, that was the one I put out. I called it the Trinity, kind of taking a poke at some of our target audience for today, because it was an observation that I made last time we did this show that men exist in three states at the same time. They're their past, their present, and their future. And a lot of their problems stem from the fact that they can't reconcile the three. And it was inspired by a gentleman that both Rollo and I know, who was doing some great things and making some fantastic progress in his personal life. And what happened was he just couldn't reconcile what he had done in the past, what he did and had great results with in the present, with the future that he desired. And that made me think about the fact that we all have to kind of reconcile and bring those three into alignment and accept them in order to become who we are supposed to be and who we want to make ourselves into. And I'm also working on my second book. I'm not sure when it will be ready, but I'm about halfway in now on the first draft, so that's going to be interesting to see how that develops. I write kind of stream of consciousness, so I just hammer out the entire thing, running stream of consciousness, and I go back through it again and tighten it up. So I don't even know how that's going to end.
However it's going to end, I'm excited. Do you have a title in mind yet?
No, and I have a few on the drawing board, but I haven't found anything that it needs to appeal to the core audience while at the same time pissing off enough people in the way that Goldman's book did, so I can get free marketing.
Yeah. Nice. Well, I promise I'm going to finish your book before the next one comes out. I'm 95% done at this point, so we're closing in on the final 5%. It's going to happen.
Oh, that's going to get interesting.
Yeah. So, Rollo, you had a bunch of topics we want to go through today, but before we get into those, I wanted to make it clear that you guys watching live can actually ask questions. You can type them live on YouTube. We'll see them in the chat, me and the other speaker, the other guest today. And in addition to that, you can actually text questions live, and we'll actually read them out. I'll read them out to you here on YouTube. The number to text questions to from anywhere in the world is 1 if you're outside the United States. So 1-256-792-T21C. or 256-792-8212. You can text questions to that with a name, first name, anonymous name, whatever. Simple, short question, no more than a few sentences, and we'll get it out live and get it answered. With that said, Rollo, you had some topics you want to go through today that we're talking about on Twitter.
Well, whenever we're kind of getting together and collaborating on what we're going to do for topics, I mean, this show has sort of snowballed into something that has become a whole lot bigger than I think you and I even expected it would be. Now we technically have two shows in one. I mean, we've got Rich right now as the second host, and we've got you as every other week. I think that's working out really well for us. So bouncing topics off of each other and having guests, I think is really working out for us pretty well. And then, of course, you're dedicating a lot more of your effort and your, I guess you're investing yourself a little bit more in this too, and I think that's really encouraging. So when we're talking, I think a lot of people don't really realize the kind of work we do, behind the scenes when it comes to the Redman group. Like I said, just know something that I don't think really any of us really thought was going to be as big as it is. I mean, it's great to have this accessibility, I think. I don't do my own podcast. As far as anybody else concerned here, I think Pat's the only one who does this for a living. So in that process, when I'm doing when I'm talking with you guys or I'm talking with people on Twitter, we come up with various topics that are either hot at that moment or they're kind of carrying over throughout, I think, the entirety of the Red Pill and the Manosphere as a whole. One of those topics is how we sort of sort out, I think, ideology as far as the Red Pill is concerned. We've talked about this before in the past, where it's been, is the Red Pill a praxeology? Is it an ideology? I think that a lot of people get confused because they want to turn the Red Pill into something that agrees with their worldview or their outlook on life. And I think that it ends up becoming sort of a convenience for these guys to sort of say, well, I'm doing things right, and so therefore I must be Red Pill. Or Red Pill only means I'm seeing the truth. Or red pill means that I'm cut away from this old or this untrue, false reality, and I'm now living in my new new, truthful reality, and it's really whatever happens to align with what their ideological bent is. And
This
so
is their ego.
yeah, exactly. And so, like, when one of the things that when I'm talking with Pat on the weekly show, it's interesting because one of the things that Pat, that's why I wanted to have him on this show, is because one thing Pat talks about, and he comes from sort of an ideological background as well. I mean, he's Catholic. I deal with religious guys all the time when it comes to red pill. Some of them are very open to it. Some of them want to reject it completely. And I'm not trying to just pick on one particular religion here, but I'm just thinking in ideological terms right now. So what I wanted to get into just to start this thing off is to say, what do we want to, where do we want to go with the red pill when it comes to ideology, and where do we want to go when it comes to, dealing with people who want to turn the red pill into what they want it to be? Because really, we're kind of factionalized, we're atomized right now. I see a lot of guys talk about, MGTOW. That's one section. Okay, great, fine. Probably the most vocal section. I think probably the mainstream public sees them as being the easy ones to pick on. I think MRAs are coming a close second, I think, and then it becomes something where they become ridiculous, or those factions become something that they want to pick on, and so to separate themselves from that, they have to try to put their truth out there, but then they're kind of fighting against this ridiculousness that is levied against them. And then you've got guys who are like I said, the MRAs. Then you've got pickup artists. Then you've got what I would just call simply the red pill, and guys that are just straight up learning about red pill theory. I think they
there's
all
also the political bent, Rollo. I think there's actually a whole new subreddit that was made called Red Pill Right. Maybe Ryan knows more about that.
Well, I think that a lot of the impression right now is that the alt-right is sort of this extension of the red pill, and I always try to discourage that idea that the next logical progression from learning about intersexual dynamics is moving on to doing something like Richard Spencer in Charlottesville. Okay, I think there needs to be a separation from that, because right now the red pill had turned into a brand that people want to pick up on. You look at the MRAs go in and they run their own documentary called The Red Pill. You look at MGTOWs, who are I would say essentially red pill guys. I just think that they react, and the more extreme guys anyways react to it, and I think maybe overreact to it, or react to it in such a way that they go to extremes. And so I think that, I think you're right. As far as the politics are concerned, I think that's something that going forward and into the future, that's something that we're going to need to address, or we're going to need to put some sort of separation between. And so the other thing I wanted to get into today was the Tradcon movement right now. And we're seeing a lot of this. I'm seeing Roosh have to deal with this. I'm seeing a lot of more conservative bent people that maybe they're not quite the total alt-right, but they're saying that they want to turn the red pill into their conservative message. They want it to be a return, I think, to the glory days, or the golden era of when men were men and women were women, and men have to pick up the responsibility for this big huge mess that we call intersexual dynamics in society right now. So I'd like to get into that a little bit today, and sort of discuss that, and sort of make a separation between red pill as a praxeology and red pill as an amoral, a-religious, apolitical. I don't want to call it a movement, really. I think I like to call it praxeology, because that's as close as I can come in a definition of it, and just sort of make people, maybe raise awareness to how the red pill is sort of being, I won't say bastardized, to reinforce other people's ideological bent.
Probably like diluted and hijacked for everybody's political ideology. Ryan, did you want to hop in and provide some context for this?
Yeah, for the red pill right, it'll be a little bit of a backstory here. So originally there was just married red pill, and there was the red pill. And then what we found is a lot of people, since most people are lazy, they don't bother reading the sidebar, so everybody kind of gets up to speed, so we're all talking the same language. So we ended up making sub-sites, Ask the Red Pill, Ask the Married Red Pill. And that was for the low quality stuff for people that want to engage, but don't quite have the quality of caliber. It's like the Bush Leagues. The Red Pill Right came up about the same time that the Donald Trump election happened. And I'm sure you guys have heard of the Donald, that Reddit subreddit that's apparently an alt-right breeding ground or whatever they call it. So it turned out there was a lot of interest in talking about politics, but when you're on a site that refers to intergender dynamics, it really has no place. So we had two options. We could either just ban everybody talking about it or just give them a sandbox to go play with. So it's not, that example is more of quality control than people trying to make it what it is. But tied to Rollo's point on that as well, and that's kind of where I went into when I talked about sex and violence being the two non-fungible measures of a man. Basically, anything else is either devalued in modern society or women can do it just as well. So that's really all we have left. And when he's talking about that, it's this need to go back to traditional conservatism. It's this bubble wrapping of life. Like, guys don't want to have to take the risk of not having a certain path. Like, you will be a man if you do A, B, and C. You build these autistic lists. 10 ways to be alpha. It's just
you're not a man until you get married. You're just a boy.
Exactly. So everybody likes it because then somebody's telling them what to do and they don't have to think. So it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it made sense back in the day where if a man wasn't working 12 hours a day on the farm, your family starved. At that point, it was necessity, but it's not necessity now. Bringing home the bacon, like bacon costs $3 at Loblaws. How much of a man are you with your grocery store masculinity? Like. And then I would say, yeah, it ties into Rollo's article he wrote on the safety net. The big advantage a lot of guys found with the red pill was that when things happen, and things will always happen, then you can kind of see, oh, it happened because of this, because of that. There's nothing you can do. It's just the way things are, and it gives a certain comfort. And that's what people who are doing the Tradcon thing are trying to get, because they're like, well, if your woman was bad to you, it's got to be that she was a low quality woman. You know, quality is this nebulous term. It means whatever you want it to be. So it can't be wrong, but it's a high quality woman and nobody ever can describe exactly what that is. And then when they do, if you describe, well, this woman was what you describe as high quality and she just cheated on her husband. So what about that? Like,
well, I think in Rollo's in the rational male kind of world that Rollo's in or creating, obviously, that's just like a social convention used to just, wrap men and wrap women bubble wrap.
It's idealism. It's idealism is what it is. And people, and I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of Tradcons want to call me to the carpet for that. They say, well, don't you believe in a quality woman as opposed to a low quality woman? I said, a quality woman is whatever your idealism tells you it is, because there's plenty of divorced guys today who were, marrying their, I use this on Rich all the time. I shouldn't pick on him. But when he got married, I'm sure he thought that his ex was a great quality woman, and simply, I think that's really, it's kind of self-serving when you come to traditional conservatism, because they want to adopt all of the most positive aspects of the red pill, and they want to say, yeah, men should be men, and anything that has to do with personal responsibility, they're all over that. But when you mention something that is unflattering about women, especially with quote unquote red pill women, then it's something that they want to say, oh, well, those red pill guys, they're just angry, they're just bitter, and they just basically resort to the same kind of shaming tactics that common feminists will do. I guess they must have little dicks, they must. Oh yeah,
you were showing me that. I think it was yesterday or day before. Some chode life coach was. Oh, these guys are bitter and they're angry. By the way, here's everything they just said. So join my coaching.
Yeah.
I was told yesterday that my mother doesn't love me and didn't breastfeed me on Twitter by this feminist chick, and she was at the convention listening to the talks, including my own. So it's like convention goes fuck yourself.
Well, I think I want to bring Pat in on this, because Pat's got a kind of a different perspective from this, because he's got a weekly show that when I started working with Pat, I was like, okay, cool, great. I'll be happy to go do terrestrial radio. And I realize you're like on a Fox affiliate, so your audience is, I would say, is pretty conservative, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, they seem to be embracing of the message or what it is that I'm talking about.
Hang on a second, before we get Pat in, Carl wanted to hop in real quick. Carl, do you have something to put in there?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. Well, I was originally going to comment on Rollo, but now I'm going to have to comment on Ryan as well. But to begin with, I think the whole I've been writing a post that I haven't published yet, mostly because I've been traveling a lot and I don't want my Twitter feed to turn into a shitstorm when I can't be there to mute people. And one of the things I've been looking at is praxeology is a branch of knowledge that deals with the nature of human action, and it's understood in economic theory as you study what people actually do, and that what people do is based on premise they have about cause and effect. If I work more, I make more money. If I go to the marketplace, I can find something to buy. And I think what confuses people is the red pill is a body of knowledge speaking academically. It's a sum of total literature that you have to familiarize yourself with, and it's apolitical, it's amoral. It's simply there as knowledge. People can apply that knowledge in however way. Like, some guy may want to use it to vet a perfect wife. Some guy may want to use it to sleep with a bunch of imperfect women. That's up to them, and the knowledge makes no judgment of that, morality speaking, which brings me to Ryan, where the whole dichotomy of, well, if she was a good woman, she wouldn't have cheated on you. If she was a quality woman, she wouldn't have given you shit constantly. And you don't want to go back to my earlier days on the blog. That's a no true Scotsman fallacy. No real quality woman would cheat on you. And that's kind of what irks me about this group, is that it's just a fallacious argument. Because
well, the argument is there. The argument's there in reverse too, right? Right, Carl? That, you know, if you were a real man, your woman would never cheat on you. And it's like alphas get cheated on too. Hypergamy does not care.
Well, the thing is, if you look in the newspapers or read the tabloids at the checkout at Walmart, you'll see that every week there's some guy who's in the top 0.1% of men whose wife is divorcing him or cheating on him. Because, I mean,
Brad Pitt
have celebrity divorces unless it happened to guys who are objectively at the top 0.1% of men.
Yeah, Brad Pitt just got divorce raped like, what, a year ago? Like, there you go.
Yeah, Chris Rock was making divorce jokes 2 months before his wife filed for divorce, and I mean, if Brad Pitt got divorce raped, Chris Rock got divorce gang raped.
Yeah. Very, very true. I think that also comes back to, I think that in a traditional conservative mindset is very, very fundamentally founded, I think, on personal responsibility. And that's always, I butt heads and unfortunately sometimes even with some of the guys that I really like, but I think that there's, like, you know, that no true Scotsman, you know, that argument right there. It's like, if you had just been a better man, she wouldn't have done that. If you'd just been, if you handled your shit, then she wouldn't have cheated on you. If you had been a better guy, you know, it's always the guy's fault. And it's from the individual level all the way up to the social level. So I have guys that will tell me, like, well, the reason that, you know, you just went out with a low quality woman, or it's this, you know, circular argument. But then I have the guys that tell me, oh, well, the reason that we're in such a shit show as far as, you know, society is concerned, or the reason that feminists, you know, get away with stuff is because men don't stop them. And I wanted to bring Pat in on that simply because I think his audience is, I think, hearing this with fresh ears for the first time. So what do you think about that, Pat?
Well, a couple things here. First of all, you know, conservative, the term conservative has been hijacked. It's one of those, somebody on the program a couple of weeks ago used the term compartment words. It's whatever you want it to mean now. It doesn't mean anything anymore. So you guys in particular, you need to make sure that the term red pill is not hijacked by somebody on my side or this side or that side out there, because they want to you know, hijack it and use it for their own gain. I was talking with Rollo on the program about candidates that come through my studio. We've got 2 big elections coming up. We've got a gubernatorial election, and I've got 6 Republican male candidates. And then on the in the 1st congressional district, I've got 5 male congressional candidates, all Republicans. Everybody and their mother's a conservative. It doesn't mean anything. Everybody I ask, I get a different definition from. You know, one guy's a common sense conservative. Well, what's that? How does that differ? You know, one guy's this kind of conservative, et cetera. The marriage thing, though, this is what I got into a really interesting conversation with Rollo about, is they come in the studio and their standard things. They say, I've been married 33 years. Okay. I go to this church. They wear the baby Jesus on their sleeve. You know, I do this, I do that, all these kind of things. And we've got a candidate running for Congress who's single. Okay. And he's a great guy, by the way. But the implication is because that he doesn't fit the mold. He's either gay or there's something defective with him. And I really resent that, because if you don't, I actually want to have a congressman that doesn't have to decide which obligation is going to be more important. Do I go back home, spend the time with the kids, or do I stay in DC representing my constituents? Because somebody's going to lose out, and 9 times out of 10, it's the kids. But they come through the studio, and you know it's the same mold, and they're playing to the crowd. And when we see them go either down to Oklahoma City, you know, which is our swamp, or to Washington D.C., they become very different people. A lot of times when we've got state races here in Oklahoma, once they get down to Oklahoma City, they act like frat boys. Up here, they're good church-going family guys, you know, but once they're down there, it's like a frat-like atmosphere. We had guys going into strip clubs. We've had all sorts of sex scandals involving Republicans here in Oklahoma. And it's a joke. All they're doing is they're playing to you. They're telling you what you want to hear, and they don't really have the core values. Some of them do, but those guys are exceptional, as opposed
like sailors
to
in a foreign port. Huh.
What's that?
They sound like sailors in a foreign port. That's like Fleet Wheat in San Diego.
Absolutely, that's what it is. In fact, I got to start using that term on the radio. So you know, the conservative and the compartment words too. I'm a big, he who controls the language controls the debate. And you hear all of these words now. People say love. Love's a compartment word because it can mean whatever you want it to mean. Family values, that's a compartment word. It's whatever you want it to mean. There's no set definition for these things anymore.
Ryan, Carl, did you want to hop in on that?
Well, it's kind of interesting to me because an anecdote here. I went to buy some pants the other day, and I found out that at the given pants store I was buying, an inch is apparently no longer an inch. And that's what I'm getting at with Pat is the term family values. It brings an image into your mind of what it is. Mm-hmm. The difference is you've diluted the definition to a point where it doesn't matter. And that's what we've been doing for the past 20, 30 years with our rhetoric. Because people keep using these words that they don't know what they mean in order to get you to agree with them. Like if I tell Pat, like, well, you want to be a good person, right? You should donate to this cause. You should donate to the less fortunate. That's in your best interests and it's in line with your self-image. Well, what's the cause I'm trying to get him to donate to? That could be anything from Planned Parenthood to gun control. And that's kind of the point you lead with. You use a form of the loaded question. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but a great example is, so have you stopped beating your wife? If you answer yes to that question, you imply that you used to beat her. If you answer no, you're saying, no, I still smack her around on occasion. And neither gets you into a good situation. So it's the same thing with the language. Like with the politically correct left, you get the whole concept of, if you're not being politically correct, well, why are you trying to hurt people who are less fortunate than you? And with the Tradcons, you get well, if you're not trying to have marriage or children, you're the kind of guy who's bringing about the fall of civilization.
Right. That's what I wanted to, sorry, Carl, I just wanted to hit on that real quick, is that I think that is becoming an increasingly more popular idea amongst the quote unquote red pill right or the alt-right. That if you are, I run into these people all the time on my Twitter feed. They're usually nationalists of some sort, but they'll pose as if they are women, or maybe they are actually women, and their qualifications for you is, how many kids do you have? You know, how are you doing with your, you know, prerequisite of supplying new bodies, or, you know, your reproductive imperatives here. And then it's like, if you are red pill to the sense where you are you're promoting personal growth or personal progression, or you're promoting responsibility. I think one of the reasons that Jordan Peterson is so popular right now is because he hits that, he scratches that itch, that personal responsibility itch. Well, the thing is that from what I find when it comes to traditional conservatives is that they're all about the red pill up until the point where you start revealing some pretty unflattering things about women, and you're doing this from as objective a perspective as you can, but yet they will say, well, that's all because of men. Women are the way they are because men let them, or they have no moral responsibility. They have no moral agency. And we've actually had this discussion or this debate a lot on Dalrock's blog on the the Christian red pill side of things. Do women actually have a moral agency? If you are just talking to this new breed of Tradcons, or the Tradcon women for sure, or what quote unquote red pill women, and I know that Ryan can speak about the red pill women subreddit to this effect, but it seems to me that they're happy to adopt all of the things that I write about in all of my books, up until the point where they are unflattering to women, and then I become a misogynist, and then I become somebody that they don't want their sons to read, because they could take that information, they could become pickup artists, or they could go and apply the game aspects of it for their own selfish gains. And I'm telling them, no, I said, this is the way things are, and this is how intersexual dynamics works, and how they choose to do that is up to you. But I think even in churches today, and I'm just going to speak to mainstream evangelical churches today. I think one of the things that's going on right now is that there's an active hostility towards men in those churches, but only because those men are not assuming, or what they believe is their responsibility to corral these women. And then once they do corral those women, there are laws and there are social conventions there to punish them for even attempting to do that. So.
Yeah, I want to jump in on the number of kids, because I got a sort of unique perspective. First of all, I'm the oldest of 13.
Wow.
And I've got 5 kids of my own. I've been accused of being a breeder on the radio. In fact, when I came to Oklahoma, the first question I was asked is, are you an OSU fan or an OU fan? And I didn't understand why that was so important, but I later found out. And then when I tell people I got 5 kids, they go, so are you a Catholic or a Mormon? I mean, there's that sort of like prejudice built into it, But I remember in a number of my brothers and sisters have 4, 5, 6 kids themselves. But when you have the first 2, everything's okay. Nobody questions that. Once you have the third, you start getting the looks. By the 4th, you get the comments, there's something they can do about that. And by the 5th, forget it. They're not even talking to you. And I'm sort of sensitive to it, especially with regard to immigrants in the country. Because I'll go to Walmart here and I'll hear somebody make a snide remark about a Hispanic woman. Look at her, she's pregnant again. Because I face that kind of stuff in my family, right, growing up. And the other side to that is people that don't have kids. They encounter a prejudice, a bias too. For example, my second oldest daughter, she's just 23, but she's been married 3 years. They don't have any children yet. My mother goes, "What's the matter?" It's just like you're a defective product if you don't have kids. Some people, I worked with a lady who desperately wanted kids. Her and her husband desperately wanted kids. They tried everything, in vitro fertilization, just couldn't have it. And when people come up and ask you the question like that, it's like really rude. People think that they're entitled to know intimate details. And for her, every time somebody asked about that, it was like ripping open a scab and just pouring salt in the wound. So, this idea that you have to fit a certain mold, and if you go outside of that mold one way or the other, you're somehow defective product.
I also see a lot of this rise in this Tradcon mindset, I think, amongst women right now. I also see this as women looking for a niche sexual marketplace. It's just like gamer girls. They want to get into the gaming culture. They want to get into comic books. Or one of the reasons. This is going to be a very unpopular thought here, but one of the reasons I think that cosplay is such a big thing right now is because women got into it because it was another way for them to get attention. But they're not really into the characters. They're not really into any of that. They love the creative side of it and they love showing off their asses. But I think that they see that as sort of a encapsulated sexual marketplace. I think the same thing is happening with traditional conservatism right now amongst women. I see it's kind of sad really, because I think that we will take the opinions of women more seriously about intersexual dynamics than we will for men these days. And that's always been true. I mean, I've been writing about that since day one. One of the reasons I think that the men's rights movement right now uses these anti-feminists, which are really anti-feminist feminists, to be their spokespeople, is because they think that their message is going to come across or get conveyed more efficiently or more believably if they have a woman telling their story. I think the same is starting to come into traditional conservative, what we call trad tots right now, and we're looking at this group of women who are seeing this as a niche sexual marketplace, so that they can attract the kind of guys that they think that they would like to be with. They think that, well, there's this thing called the red pill, and there's these guys who are making self-improvement a priority for them, and they hold the same beliefs as I. And it doesn't matter that I'm a single mother with 3 kids from 4 different fathers, but it's like, they don't care about that, because now all that's in the past, and they've had this epiphany that they want to be these traditionally conservative women. And so they expect to have men man up, and really I think that that's what this is. It's another version of man up. They're expecting these men to man up and become someone who is qualified for their new perspective on life, which is their traditional conservatism that they've suddenly refound after 29 years old. And so I think that we're seeing a lot of that sort of filter in right now, because when I see, like, I think Roosh was doing a podcast not too long ago where they call it an internet blood sport, but he had all these women that were coming on trying to, they're trying to confront him about, his opinions about trad tots or they're basically these women who go and put out these videos, and they seem like they're traditional conservatives, and they seem like they are the kind of women that, if you are looking for a quality woman, if you believe in the quality woman meme that part of the red pill, I guess, wants to promote, if you believe in a quality woman, they want to be that quality woman. And what does that mean? That means that you have to handle your shit. You have to be conservative. You have to jump through all of these new hoops that they want you to jump through. And oh, by the way, support me on Patreon while I'm putting out these videos in my new sexual marketplace. So I can see why it's very, very appealing to this new branch of, I don't want to call it a branch of the red pill, because it's not really red pill. I mean, it's just they're using convenient aspects of that, or the self-improvement. And that was another thing I wanted to get into with you guys is, I know that there are different aspects of the red pill. I know that there are guys who are going to be married. There's going to be guys like Hunter Drew. There's going to be guys like Craig James. There's going to be guys like, who are going to have that more conservative, more, build yourself kind of side of things. I have agreements with that, and I have disagreements with that. I think that in some ways it's very, very genuine, and I think in other ways it's disingenuous, because again, it sort of feeds into that, man up and marry those sluts dynamic. And I think that you have to be really careful with self-improvement, because self-improvement ends up becoming a cult. It ends up becoming very culty, I should say.
Masturbation.
Yeah, it becomes
exactly what they meant in Fight Club in 1999.
Yeah, it is, and it becomes this. I'm dedicated to self-improvement. Well, what are you going to do with that? What do you actually do with that? That's one of the reasons I like Jack Donovan so much, because he's into self-improvement but he's into it because he has a utility for that. He has something to do with being a better guy, and he wants to go out there and actually use that self-improvement for something else. Whereas in other, I'm not going to name names, but in other aspects of the manosphere, I see a lot of guys they're just dedicated to self-improvement. Okay, what do you do with it? When are you self-improved enough? When have you reached the plateau? When have you reached the next stage? And it's always, how do I get girls? How do I have a better life? How do I keep my hair? How do I eat better? And then there's this,
something that actually reminds me of Rolo is, it sounds like self-improvement without a purpose or direction is like, not just masturbation, like Ryan might call it, but it's like not recognizing that you're male and what that means. So it's like aimless self-improvement.
Well, I should also say here, and I'll let Pat jump in here in a minute, but I think that it becomes a purpose unto itself. So it's like, I'm doing this for me, you know. Rather, you know, when you go to the gym, you like to say, I've yet to meet a guy who says he goes to the gym just to go get in as best shape as he can so he can get the most pussy that he can get, right? It's always, I do it for me. And, you know, there's always wants to be some sort of internal justification for why they're doing something. I'm using gym, you know, going to the gym and physical fitness as one aspect of that. But there's other aspects as well that I think that we kind of fool ourselves that there's not another latent purpose to that as well. I mean, I'm glad that you do that. I'm glad that that's, you know, something that's personally, you know, validating for you. Great. But there's also the side effect, and the byproduct of that is you look better, and women want to get with you more. Carl, did you have something?
Yeah, I wanted to comment on the Tradcon thing, because about 2.5 years ago, I put out a monster of a blog post called The Female Sexual Strategies Part 1 and 2, where I have a gigantic flow chart. And one of the strategies in there is the cool chick. And I named it that because all of us have met a girl who's just one of the guys. Now, this is very similar to the strategy that a lot of beta males use, where, oh, I'm just going to identify with the feminine. I'm going to agree with whatever you girls say. I'm going to support that. I'm going to basically be your male girlfriend. And this is where I see these various niches of gamer girls, drag girls, etc. They're just seeing that, okay, there is a Hunter Drew out there. There's a Craig James out there, and a lot of these other guys who want the traditional lifestyle. And if we jump in there, we can actually get the kind of guy we want. We'll get the guy he has enough of an edge to still be exciting, and he still has enough of personal responsibility to take care of us and to do his shit as a man. Because a lot of the negotiation that the modern beta man does with women is basically saying that, okay, you know what? If you let me let go of the performance burden, then you don't have to do shit. And it's kind of like a negotiation of laziness. Like, it's two potheads discussing who's buying the pizza and who's rolling the next joint. It's like, well, you know, we'll both settle for the bare minimum, and I get laid once a week. I get the starfish duty sex, and I'll make sure you're not one of the 40-50% of women who end up in poverty because they don't have a man after the age of 35.
Did you want to hop in?
Yeah, I wanted to comment on Rollo. I think Rollo made the comment a little bit earlier about his books. Okay, and in fact, I dealt with that here at home personally. Well, you don't want to give those to your sons, do you? Because you don't want your boys to grow up to be players. And the deal is, look, they got to know the rules to the game. It's like you're going out to play football, but you don't know how to play football. You don't know how the game's played. We've been handing them, and somebody used the analogy, it's not perfect, but we've been handing the guys the rules to baseball. It doesn't work in football. You know what I'm saying? So I might not want my boys to grow up to be players, but they got to understand what's going on and how they're all being played. This series of books, The Rational Male, has implications for just about everything in society. It's not just the dating game. It's not being married. It's just how you interact with people of the other sex.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to bring up, an open question or kind of issue for all of us to go over. I feel like, and Rollo's talked about this plenty on his blog, with particularly like in churches and things like that. But it's almost like Tradcons in particular are really dedicated to men manning up just to the point that they're more powerful and more masculine, but just still within the control of women in their lives.
They want a better plow horse.
A much better plow horse. And I feel like that's what they're feeding into the strongest, much more so than, for example, maybe the PUAs or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Anthony, here.
Oh, go ahead,
Rollo.
I was just going to say that, and I was going to use the Apple K Married Man Sex Life blog and forums going down as sort of an example. Yeah, rest in peace. As an example of that, I was just looking at the chat here a minute ago, and they're talking about male space, and I've got a pretty solid post, I think, on male space and how it is invaded by women and how it is reformed and assimilated. That's easy to see in sort of the smaller groups, but when you get into a larger group where it's a mostly male space, and we're not allowed to have male space anymore. We can, if you look at the was Harvard just banned all male organizations or extracurricular organizations, but women can still have their all women groups. So when you're looking at a society and what I call feminine primary social order that is based on men have to be overseen and they have to have they've got to be under surveillance all the time, while women can go ahead and just have whatever they want. I mean, we're looking at like also the Boy Scouts is another good example of that, I think, too. But when we're talking about larger institutions, we're talking about like religion, or we're talking about ideology, political ideology. We see how that the feminine imperative kind of works its way into finding ways to make it about them, to finding ways to make. That's why one of the reasons we're even talking about this right now is because we have traditional conservative women who are trying to use and trying to assimilate the parts of the red pill that they agree with, that want to fit in, but up to a point. And that's really what happened, I think, with Athol K and Married Man's Sex Life, is it fell apart because in the beginning it was a very solid pro-masculine, pro-man male space, and step by step, inch by inch, women became more and more a part of it and became, responsible for the message and basically assimilated it and turned it into something that was never intended to be. Now, I see a lot of that, or I see a potential for that in the manosphere. I see that a lot of guys who are going to want to, they're going to want to placate to their wives, or they're going to want to, they like Pat was saying, that there's this worry about these guys who are going to take the red pill or take what I write or the game theory, game of some sorts, or pickup artistry, and they're going to use that to shirk their responsibilities for being these these good husbands, or building themselves up to be better men for these women, not for themselves, for them. And I think that it's a sign of the times, really, that they're trying to assimilate and trying to get in there so that they can say, well, okay, you got us, guys. The red pill's true, all that stuff is great, but now you have to use your superpowers for good and not for evil, because we live in a feminine primary social order, and don't you want to benefit society? Because if you use it, and if you want to be the guy who is sitting poolside while the world burns, well, that makes you part of the problem. And so they want to use that morality sense. Like, don't you care about? Yeah,
I think it's incredibly stupid, by the way, when people say that about anybody who wants to sit poolside. Like, I'm not that guy, but those people are not part of the problem. They're not even in the way. They're just observing. And that's their right if they want to do that.
And I'll just be real quick here. It's like when people come and hit me, especially when it's Tradcons, where I get women who say, well, how many kids do you have? I have one. I am 50 years old. I have been married for 21 and a half years. And, I can run down all these pre-qualifiers. It doesn't matter, because they still see me disseminating information that could be used to cut them out of the loop, or cut them out of their ideological goals, in theory, that I'm a danger to them, or they'll agree with me up to a point, or they'll agree with me up until what's profitable to their coaching, program, or whatever it is that they, their life coaching program, they'll agree with me up to that point. But when it starts to become a liability to them, then they back off from it. So it's only done in half measures. It's only, man up to a point, but not so much that you're going to be a threat to the power dynamic.
Yeah, well, here, go Carl.
Oh, wait, was Ryan first? Ryan, if you're first, go for it. Carl,
yeah, well, I was going to tie everything you're saying together here in kind of like a bigger picture. So over the past hour, we've talked about Tradcons, cosplayers, gamer girls, and it's all on a common theme. So generally guys that can't succeed in like the traditional space, which for today, that's disposable girlfriends, Tinder, free love, 1960s bullshit. They kind of build their own fantasy girls. So sometimes it's their waifu pillows. Sometimes it's that traditional conservative Catholic girl from the 1920s or whatever. And when Rollo talks about gamer girls, it's a niche thing. And it's the oldest female seduction technique out there, is to play to a man's ego. So a bunch of guys show that this anime character is their ideal woman. So this woman's like, see, I'm your ideal woman. And the guys believe it. It's not a problem with lies or with belief systems. It's one of perception. guys see it because that's what they want to believe. And this is where I find the red pill is great, because it's I gotta use an art reference here because it's hard to explain without sounding like a big fucking nerd. But so if people can't draw, give them a photograph, tell them to draw it. They'll draw it, and they draw what they know. So what does an eye look like? What does a head look like? And the picture looks like absolute shit. Turn it upside down, and then people will draw it again. But instead of drawing what they know, they draw what they see. And they tend to get a much more accurate photo out of it. Now, if you guys can draw the connection I'm going with here, it's the same thing with women. You don't think Tradcon women, she actually wants to sit on the stove 12 hours a day, barefoot and pregnant. And you don't think that cosplay girl really wants to fight zombies with that gigantic fucking sword she's got, wearing, tiny little girl panties or whatever. The whole point of Red Pill, and why we're so, I guess, anti-Tradcon, I guess is the best way to put it, an anti-waifu pillow, is because they're not looking at reality. They're perceiving what they want to be there. And it's a common thread, and it seems that no matter what group we're talking about here, it always has that exact same formula to it. And it's crazy, because once you get through Rational Male 1 and 2, you start getting into like Dalrock, some of the other guys, and you start to see, I hate to use the Matrix reference too, since I just said I didn't want to be a fucking nerd, but how you can only see the code, you just see red, white, blue, redhead, whatever. It's just like that. And it's just, I just find it very fascinating. And then when you see a guy coming at you, when he's still talking about his unrealistic wish for fantasy, it's just kind of like watching a child just telling you that you don't know what you're talking about. And it's hard to do anything but laugh and then make fun of their hairline. I don't know, not mentioning anybody in specific on that one. But anyways, I've rambled on long enough. Carl, it's all you now, man. There's my art reference for the day.
Yeah, Carl and Pat.
Well, I just wanted to comment that I was sitting here thinking, because I come from a family where, most of the marriages and relationships around me have been lasting for over 30 years. So I'm not the child of divorce, nor have I grown up with divorce around me. And one of the things that I've noticed is that in all those couples, they view marriage as kind of a means to an end. They get into it because it benefits both parties of it towards an end they can both agree on. But now it's pretty much that a woman gets married to use the man as a means to realize her own end. And that was my note. Pat?
Yeah, I wanted to jump in on the man, I lost my train of thought there. I made a note. The shaming. Okay, so when I started bringing Rollo on, okay, first of all, I mentioned I cleaned up the language for terrestrial radio, because we can't use 4-letter expletives. And some people went out and purchased the Audible book, like I did. See, when you're a radio talk show host, if you do it right, you develop a relationship with your listeners, and your listeners become your friends, and they grow to trust you. And when you promote something or endorse something, that means something to the listener. So when I brought Rollo on, and I'm talking about his book, and I'm saying it's a good thing, some people were disappointed when they get the Audible book and they hear the 4-letter expletives. I'm a little disappointed in you. So they're shaming me because I'm recommending something that's got language that they don't hear from me or they don't approve of. So then I'm attacked. Or people will ask me, are you going through a midlife crisis? Or I've noticed a change in you. Somebody asked me, are you getting divorced? It's like all of a sudden, if you start to go too red pill with people, you get attacked and they try to shame you.
Like crabs in a bucket, they're pulling you back.
Definitely. Yeah. And the reson for that is because they want to see a certain predictability in you. They want to be able to predict your response. And that gives them a sense of control, or at least a sense of comfort with you in most cases, but in some cases, a sense of control over you. So they're expecting you to be the same person all the time. And yeah, I tell guys this all the time, when they finally sort of come to terms with the red pill and they unplug, I told them that's the first thing you're going to notice. You're going to see people who are going to say, there's a change in you, or when did you turn into an asshole? Or it's like they're just the reason is because nobody's telling them, nobody's ever told them these basics before. And so I think that, and I'm glad you brought that point, because that's another thing that traditional conservatives have a problem with, is they have a problem with the delivery. I've had to deal with that constantly, where they're saying, you could be nicer in your delivery. You could, you could just tell this stuff in such a way that women wouldn't be so turned off to it. And I'm like, no, the reason that it is inflammatory to you isn't necessarily the language, it's the information that's in the language of what I'm telling you. So I can tell you, I can tell you all about hypergamy in sweet, nice, scientific ways, but you're still going to disagree with it, and you're still going to have a problem with it, because just me bringing that up, it
quashes their
it's iconoclastic. It's iconoclastic. It breaks their ego investments in that. So
how dare you talk about my waifu pillow?
Yeah, exactly. And so and then just getting back to what Ryan was saying is like, yeah, there's a reason why guys have waifu pillows, or there's a reason why they want that, because it's an ideal. It's an idealism for them. They want to know that they can be satisfied. They want to know that that's why we believe in one-itis. We were just talking, like Pat and I were talking about one-itis on Friday. The reason that is such a seductive mythology for really both sexes, but for men in particular, is because men tend to be far more idealistic in their outlook on life, whereas women are far more internalistic or opportunistic. I always talk about, I try to make a case here in as many different ways, but that women are solipsistic, and it's been in both of my books. I've got several blog posts about that if anybody wants to read about it. But that's an innate part of women's evolved psyche, or their mental firmware. So there's that aspect, whereas men, like I think it was Stephen Pinker was just saying that men tend to be more interested in things, where women tend to be more interested in people. And we have kind of built a social order for since the sexual revolution that has prioritized women, and in doing so, it has made how women communicate. And that's why I say the feminine imperative, their imperatives and the things that benefit them the most, those become the correct things in society. Whereas before, things were a little bit more balanced, because we didn't have to worry, the men and women that were dealing with an older social order. That older social order came from a lot of other different things. What?
Well, I have a specific question for you that just occurred to me. It should have been maybe obvious sooner. Do you think that political correctness running just completely out of control in recent decades has a lot to do with the way females and women communicate? Because that's what it feels like.
That's
their communication style into the culture.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that women communicate in a covert. So there's a language that women use, or that they prefer to use, because women's brains are wired for communication. Well, I could show you dozens of different studies about the sexual differences between the neurology of men and women. They are wired for communication. They are wired for understanding things. They are wired for emoting. And in the series that I'm working on right now, which is Instinct, Emotion, and Reason, emotion is probably the single most important part of that equation to women, because it's how that conversation makes them feel. It's not like when men communicate, they communicate information, and it's all about the content of what that conversation is about. How to fix a car, how to do this, it's like how to. We're dealing with things. When it comes to women, it is, how does this conversation make me feel? It's about the context of that conversation between two. Like, women will get together and they will talk to each other, and they'll set up a time just so they can communicate. Whereas men, we get together because we have something to do. We have to go out, and we're looking at it, even more, we're socializing, we're looking outward and not at each other. We're looking at the game, or we're looking at what's going on. Whereas women are looking at face to face and talking to each other, because that is part of that different communication style. So when you take that and you build that into a social narrative, now the only correct way to communicate is how women communicate, because that's why we have such a emphasis on teaching boys to get in touch with their emotions, teaching men and teaching boys to emote. I constantly said, I've said this on Pat's show several times, that we teach boys as if they're defective girls. Well, they're defective because their natural inclination is not to communicate and not to interpret information cognitively as a girl does. And that's, I think, is one of the biggest disservices we're doing right now. But then if you extrapolate that into a bigger social narrative, yes, definitely. That's why we get to this PC. We want to wrap ourselves in bubble wrap. We need our safe spaces, because we're not focusing on the information. We're focusing on how it makes us feel. And that's exactly why we have safe spaces. And it's exactly why, women get, they'll go protest a guy, not because of what he's saying, but because of what he made that group of people feel. And that group of people are emoting, or they're interpreting information, and they're interpreting the debate and the conversation in emotional terms. And so that's why you've got, that's why we're in the situation we're in right now. Really, what is Antifa? Antifa is just an emotional reaction or emotional outburst because they don't know how to deal with that information like a man would deal with it. So you're looking at the result of, probably 4 or 5 generations of these guys and women who have learned that the only way to cognitively process information is in an emotional sense. So yes, definitely.
Like a fucking 2-year-old that has no impulse control with placating parents.
Well, that goes back to instinct for sure. But it's interesting when I'm on with Pat, like Pat was saying, like before we started here, that occasionally we'll have the one rabid feminist that comes on, but Pat was saying that for the most part, the women readers or the women listeners agree with what I'm saying. I remember when Pat was telling me, like off air, he said they had some, I guess they had some meetings as to what his show's about, and they're bringing up my name, and the women in the group are saying, yeah, I agree with whatever, exactly with what he's saying, but we're thinking, oh my gosh, is this bad? Is this gonna lose us listeners or whatever else? Because the dialogue or the idea in our social order is that the information that I'm providing is offensive. It's not how I'm delivering it so much as the information itself that becomes the catalyst for being offended by it.
Yeah, it being right or wrong has been reduced to irrelevancy, which is just bonkers.
Oh, that's just like girls, how they don't like watching animals get slaughtered, but they're perfectly happy to eat meat. It's like you said before with your roller coaster analogy. They don't mind the danger because the payoff is great. They just don't want to be exposed to it.
Yeah, or they want to know people are in control of it behind the scenes.
Yeah, and so like with Pat, if they're making fun of you for having 5 kids or making fun of you for not having 20 kids, it's like, well, fuck, you're not my judge. If they're willing to pay the child support, you're willing to have as many kids as they want, but they don't seem to willing to pay up for those opinions. They just kind of want you to dance to their tune to make them feel good about their personal life choices.
Yeah, let me jump in on that because we were talking about people saying, are you changing? I read a book probably about 15 years ago, Change Your Thinking, Change Your Life by Brian Tracy. And it was an epiphany for me. And I think that one of the problems with guys is a lot of guys, once they hit 40, they're stuck. They don't grow, they don't read, they don't do anything. They're stagnant. And in the workforce, especially the industry I'm in, that could be the death nail. That could put you out of business. But you should constantly be questioning your belief system. Okay, why do I believe this? Is it because I was raised that way? I was taught that way? Is it true today? You should constantly be challenging your belief system. And if you're the same at 40 as you were at 20, you're the problem. You're the problem. You're stagnant. Not only are you not gaining ground, you're losing ground.
Well, in that case, he would have rejected the burden of male performance, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Sorry to interrupt. I don't know if you have.
That was pretty much my thought on that one, though. So, but you should constantly be challenging. The other thing with me is my listeners know that I'm not a follower. I haven't been a follower since I was 17. I had a pivotal moment at 17 that took me from being somebody who follows to somebody who leads. So I'm my own guy. I'm not just going to follow something because, well, this is what conservatives are supposed to believe, or this is what your church teaches that you've got to do. Like I said, you should be constantly questioning what your belief system on a regular basis. Going, is it true today? It may have been true 10 years ago. Is it true now? And if so, why?
Carl?
Yeah, I was back to Rollo's question about the female versus male communication styles. I was going to post an essay today entitled I've got 99 problems and soy is every fucking one. And in that, I was going through basically what this soy boy is, because I used to hate that meme. But I've started to use it, and I've even had other people start to use it. Like, I've been referring to HR at my company as Team Soy for the past couple of months. And I got a phone call from the CEO of the company going, well, you should check it with Team Soy on Monday. So it's catching on. and I'm making it happen. But the two things that you notice a major difference on the Big Five personality inventory between men and women is agreeableness and neuroticism. And what you see with women is they are very focused on maintaining the peace within the group. That's why they tend to use covert communication. If you look at boys and girls in high school or younger, the boys will fight physically. They will beat the shit out of each other, and they'll be friends the next day. The women will draw this out into a long Game of Thrones style intrigue. Well, they'll go back and forth fighting each other covertly, and that's because for women to be ostracized from a group back in the caveman days would have been death. Men have voluntarily left the group regularly because they felt like, I can do better without these people tying me down. And what makes, let's say, a beta male or a soy boy different is simply the fact that they've adopted the female perspective. Instead of confronting someone directly, they use social media. Instead of talking to someone about something, they will spread rumors in the peer group. And they'll be like, well, you know, Pat, we've talked together in the group, and I'm not going to say who said what, but we think you're being somewhat offensive and not really doing the best in the best interest of the company by bringing this supposedly rational male on every week. I'm not sure what's going on with you, but we're concerned about you.
Yeah,
sounds like you've been sitting in on some of the meetings.
Sounds like every fucking board meeting I've been on. Jesus.
Let me jump in on something that just popped into my head. The role of testosterone. It really is what makes a guy a guy. My dad was diagnosed with prostate cancer a number of years ago, and he agreed to a treatment that included a series of shots that completely shut down his testosterone production. So when the testosterone's down, the estrogen goes up. It completely changed my dad's personality. My dad went from being the strong, silent, stoic type to a guy that was very emotional and just he was cranky at times. But I was even joking around with him. I said, are you watching a lot of Lifetime TV? He didn't think that was too funny. But once the treatment subsided and his, I guess, natural testosterone, given his age and everything, slowly creeped back, he was back to being dad again. You know, in talk radio land, there's a lot of hormone replacement therapy or TRT places that advertise. But they always sell it on the sex component, which is important. But what it really is important for is a sense of well-being. A lot of guys that are 40 and older who go to the doctor, I just don't feel like myself. I don't have energy. I'm feeling anxious. I'm depressed. The first thing the doctor wants to do is put you on an antidepressant when that's not what you need. You need to get your testosterone levels checked. You need to get your free total testosterone and free testosterone checked. And a lot of times that's the problem, and that can be quickly rectified.
Yeah, Rich Cooper's really hard on that right now. He's I forget the guy he had on not too long ago on his show, but yeah, he was saying
I think it was Jay Campbell.
And he was even hitting me up afterwards. He's like, you got to go get your testosterone checked. I'm like, I don't think I've never had a problem with that, but I will now after I saw that. So yeah, and that, yeah, exactly. It's funny how you mentioned that too. Is like that when it's sold on the sexual component. It's sold on how can I satisfy my wife better? How can I? That's really what when you look at Viagra, it's not so much an erectile dysfunction drug as it is here's how you satisfy your wife drug. And so it ends up becoming, who are you doing it for? Are you doing it for yourself, or are you doing it so that you can keep your marriage together? I think it's interesting how they prioritize.
Let me jump in on this. Here's the other thing with the hormone replacement therapy. I think one of the big problems is it's sold only to the males. If you're going to do it, it's got to be a couples thing, because if you put Papa at 50 on hormone replacement therapy, testosterone, he's going to have the libido of a 28-year-old. Meanwhile, the wife has either gone through or is headed toward menopause, and those two ships are not going to pass in the night. I can't tell you how many relationships I know. Yeah, can't tell you how many relationships I know about that have broke up over that. So what they really need to do is go in as a couple and approach it as a couple, not just one or the other.
Bring a mistress.
Yeah, there you go.
That'll boost your testosterone.
Yeah.
All right, we should take some questions here before Pat's got to hop off in a little bit. We had a few come in. I posted them in the chat.
Also, while you're looking at questions, congratulations. Not a single purple pill life coach has tried to build their brand off of talking shit to anybody here. Just think it's a round of applause worthy there. Fucking well done.
Yeah. It's interesting to see what that branch of the manosphere is doing these days when it comes to building a brand on exactly this sort of reinterpretation, this this new understanding, or an attempt to water down the red pill truths and
intellectual drop shipping.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, order the stuff from China where it's built, and then put my stickers on it, and all of a sudden it's way better. Like, no, it's not.
Let's get the
go ahead.
A question here from Boo Boo on YouTube. Fantastic name. What do you do if you're stuck in the red pill rage or depression phase? What makes it hard is you cannot talk about this stuff with people in real time or they will kill you. I don't think he means that literally, but yeah. Brian?
One thing that was awesome about Jordan Peterson is he mentioned this, is if you're having an emotional reaction to something after the fact, it's because you haven't processed it. Write it down. Honestly, that's why I started my blog. I was really fucking pissed at the military. And then once you started writing things down, you put connections together, and it chills you right out, and you start to, once you understand what's going on. So that's all that anger is. And there's a psychological background to it.
So what you're saying basically is you've externalized it into writing and you can understand it better that way. And I've seen Jordan talk about that as well.
Like, have you guys ever tried, like, I know obviously Carl has and Rollo has, but have you guys ever tried this? Write something down when you couldn't understand it. And then it's a stark example of where your gaps are in your knowledge, because you can't just like blather along or use metaphors and that. You kind of really have to understand things. It's like how teaching is the best way to remember. Same thing like that.
Well, I know a guy who he used to work as a psychiatric nurse, and what his job was basically take people who had suffer from depression, anxiety, psychosis, schizophrenia, whatever, out on things that would kind of brighten their day because they were locked up in an institution. And what he said was, if you put an axe in someone's hands and tell them to chop wood, nobody has depression, nobody has rage. Because if you're swinging an axe, you have to concentrate on the axe, otherwise you're going to chop your leg off. And what I found for me is I'm naturally a bit more, let's say, analytical and thought-oriented. So for me, what works is getting physical with it, put things into practice, go to the gym and work out, go do some cardio, and just let things ruminate in the back of your mind for a while, and things will tend to work out. And I think it depends on whether you're kind of a doer guy or a thinker, primarily.
I deal with, I've been doing a little bit of counseling on the sides for guys these days. And this is a real common question. I get guys that, how do I get past this abyss? And that's what I call for lack of better terms, what I call the abyss. And it's really hard for men who have been, conditioned by the blue pill for so very, very long. And then they even come across, just maybe not even my books, maybe they just come across something in the manosphere that really awakens them or speaks to them in some way. Because the joke I always have is that, no guy is actually looking for the manosphere, but they seem to find it when they need to find it. We don't advertise. I mean, if you look at the only press we seem to get in the manosphere is really just bad press, but yet still, with all of that stacked against it, it still speaks to guys and still wakes them up, and it still it presents something to them that's really uncomfortable, and that's part of, I think, the process of unplugging. I talked about unplugging in the various 5 stages of unplugging, but I think that one of the most difficult phase is the guys who get nihilistic about things, and they want to say that everything is hopeless because their hope had been built on this old blue pill idealism, and now they have this red pill truth that is contradicting everything that had to do with whatever they've been taught. And so a lot of this manifests as anger. A lot of it can manifest as depression. And so I think that's part of the rap. I think that even what we're talking about, Tradcon's and PC, view of the red pills, they think that it's all just about anger. They think it's all just about nihilism, and it's not. And I think that if I was to give a guy advice when they're in that crossing of the abyss phase, is that you need to be more, they need to understand that there's more opportunity knowing the truth and building a life and building your idealism based on a red pill truth instead of the blue pill that has been that's been keeping them, as a useful animal to serve a particular purpose. Whereas now they're cut away from that. And so, yeah, it can be very a shock to the system. And so, people want to interpret that anger as anger towards women. It's not anger towards women. It's anger towards themselves for having lived a certain way for so long and not having seen it before.
Let me jump in on the anger real quick.
Go for it.
Guys, our automatic default is anger. That's when we're frustrated, when we're upset, we get angry. Women get emotional. Women cry. Guys go to anger first. Let me share a real quick story. First time I ever got fired from talk radio, I was fit to be tied. I was pissed. I mean, people thought I was going to do something bad to my former employer. I mean, that's how stewed I was. And I sat around probably for close to 6 months, just pissed off. And I was snapping at everybody around me, my wife, my kids. Nobody wanted to be near me because I was that pissed off. And then I had an epiphany. I realized that being pissed off didn't hurt the guy I wanted to hurt. The only person it hurt was me and the people around me that I supposedly loved, right? So I dealt with that anger. I just put it aside, and I got my ass busy finding my next job because I had to put food on the table. I had to provide for my family. But that life lesson for me, anger and depression does nothing to solve a problem. It only hurts you. You got to get busy. You got to move forward. You got to take action. Sitting around being angry, pissed off, it doesn't do anything. It allows you to stagnate, and you just wallow in mediocrity when you're like that.
One thing I wanted to add on this, Rollo mentioned that guys are angry at themselves. I agree 100%. But I think in addition to that, there's legitimate anger against an entire system that's stacked through multiple generations at this point against men. There's real hostility at this point that you're showing me a link earlier today, Rollo, from Terry Crews, that's calling masculinity a cult or something. Yeah, right. Terry Crews, a famous actor, called masculinity a cult. It's like, dude, go fuck yourself. No, it's not.
Exactly.
It's funny, a natural part of human life, and it's who we are.
His success is almost directly attributable to the conventional masculinity. If you look at the guy, I mean, look where he's at and the opportunities that he's had. It's because of conventional masculinity that has put him where he's at. But yet his conditioning is such that he wants to identify and align himself with women. Now, I think that when I'm debating, I think one of the biggest lies, I want to say, is when guys are criticizing the red pill, they think that it's just about anger. They think it's only about that phase. They think it's only about getting angry with women or getting angry at society. Okay, first of all, it's not, and I can show you a million different ways why it's not. I can show you at least 1,000 different guys who've benefited and saved their own lives because of it. But that being beside the point, I think that what that particular mindset has a problem with red pill is because they think that it gives those guys a license to be pissed off. It gives them a license to not be concerned with themselves. I think that's one of the reasons that critics focus so much on MGTOWs, because they think that is the end result of understanding red pill awareness. And I'm telling you right now, it doesn't have to be that at all. I can understand why guys go MGTOW, but it doesn't have to be that. And it doesn't have to be that anger. But I think that it comes back to a conflict with personal responsibility. Like you were just saying a little while ago, just to say and just to point out things in society that are, part of the feminine imperative that are stacked against guys. The Tradcon PC response to that as well, it's because of men. It's because you're not living up to your responsibility. It's only a problem because you haven't found it within yourself to change yourself to be a better person. And so it always comes back the other way. Like when I look at the stuff from Tony Robbins, or I look at the stuff from Jordan Peterson, or I look at the stuff, even a lot of the new stuff that's coming out of RSD these days, it's all about fix yourself, fix yourself, fix yourself. Okay, I get that. That's fine. And they keep coming back to this. But guess what? Sometimes your life is shit because other people are shit. Sometimes it's shit because of circumstances. How you deal with that, yeah, that's on you. Okay, fine. But you know what? Those circumstances are shit and they had nothing to do with you, okay? And I think that it's a mistake to automatically, just have that as your default, response to accept that you are always the one to blame. And it's this constant. It's the easiest way out. It's the easiest prescription for these guys.
Social Security. Social Security in the United States has been bankrupt since I think the late 1980s when I was born. So it's like that was dumped on me as a generation by generations before me. How the fuck is that my fault?
Exactly. And the Tradcon response is that, well, you need to fix yourself. This wouldn't have happened if you'd have just fixed yourself. And it's like,
it's delusional.
How am I part of this?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, one thing that's good about that, from a self-improvement perspective, is once you have unfucked yourself, at least then, anything that does happen, you have that confidence to say, well, that's not my problem. You just, it's so you can look yourself, it's all we want at the end of the day, just a little dignity to look at yourself in the mirror and know that you're not a bag of shit. Is that so much? I mean, it's a lot to ask, but it shouldn't be a lot to ask. So you do the self-improvement thing. Oh, sorry, Carl, go.
No, but to touch on things that all of you guys have said here. Now, what we're essentially doing to men in today's society is that we're teaching them the wrong words to the Star-Spangled Banner. And then when they get pissed off because all the other kids are making fun of them because they sang it wrong in recess or whatever, then we tell them, oh, you shouldn't be angry because we fucked you over. You need to go ahead and fix yourself. You're the problem here because you were too gullible.
Yeah, this is what cluster Bs do too, Carl.
Yeah, it's a brilliant cluster B tactic because basically they tell you the wrong rules. Then when you respond to it, well, Jesus, why didn't you listen to me?
And they're not wrong.
What's wrong with your judgment? No, they're not wrong per se, but let's say let's say I was your dad, Ryan, and I'm not because I'm white, but other points withstanding.
Actually, my dad's a redhead if you didn't know.
No, that definitely disqualifies me. But anyway, the case is if when you're 2 years old, your mother, well, let's say your lesbian mother, told you every day that you're a man and you're everything that's wrong with the world and everything about all your natural proclivities, interests, and reactions are wrong, and then you're going to live your entire life based on the premise that, oh, I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't do that. You can never build confidence like that because the way you build confidence is through success. And the way you, let's say, experience success is seeing a situation, acting in the situation, and seeing you get an outcome that's actually worth it. So a lot of guys, they come to the red pill and they realize that, oh, crap, someone told me the wrong words to this national anthem, and they either get depressed because I can't believe I spent 15, 20, 30 years of my life on this following the wrong rules, or they get angry. Why did they lie to me? So that's a kind of a classic cluster B tactic. They put you in a situation where either you're angry with yourself or you're angry with everyone else, and you're told that anger is not acceptable, so you get depressed. But depression doesn't fix anything. It just puts you wallowing in the same spot you were in 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, 10 months ago, 12 months ago, 15 months ago. And depression
keeps you
is one
trapped in
hell of a drug.
It's like keeps you trapped in a cycle, like betas who can't figure out the negative consequences of blue pill behavior. No matter how many consequences they get thrown in their face, they just stay stuck in that cycle. You've written about this in your blog a lot, Carl, I think.
Yeah, and then you see them talking about how they want men to have more emotions. Well, like, fuck, we just gave you 2 and you just threw it back in our face. Go fuck yourself.
Exactly. But this is kind of why I wrote that post a while back ago about hyperagency and hypoagency, because you basically have 2 types of people. You have people who are saying that we are responsible for everything. Let's say you were away for 12 months feeding your family and your wife cheated on you. Then, well, that's your fault for not doing the right thing and not being alpha enough. Or you're the guy who's always there, always helpful, and that's your fault for not being alpha enough. Or you have the guy who's basically sitting there going, well, whatever happens, happens. I'm not to blame. I have no agency whatsoever. And the truth is, there's a middle ground here, because you can do your absolute best and your wife can still cheat on you, but you can also do your absolute best and she won't. And anger is there because I think anger is the most fantastic emotions in the world, because in my life, nothing has brought me more progress than that moment when someone tells me you can't do this, or you won't be able to figure this out. And I'm like, you know what? Fuck you. I'm going to figure this out, and I'm going to do it for no other reason than to show you that you're wrong.
Hell yeah.
I mean, spite and what the Germans call Schadenfreude are the two strongest male emotions in the world. Being able to use anger to propel you forward and pleasure in the pain of people who fucking deserve it.
Well, it's probably the reason that anger gets shut down so quick, because it's so useful and productive and normal. It's a normal part of human life, and it's productive, like you're saying, Carl. I agree.
I think Pat has to take off now.
Yeah, gentlemen, I got to plug out. Carl, you nailed it with spite. Spite has driven me to do many great things over the years. It's a great force to be reckoned with.
Man of my own heart.
Thanks for the opportunity, guys. Keep up the good work. Appreciate it.
All right, man.
Pat, thanks for hopping on, man. See you soon.
Great to meet you, Pat.
See you, Pat.
Really like that guy.
Yeah, he's awesome.
See what you do on the radio with him. He's awesome.
Yeah, it's great. It's such a great opportunity, and it's awesome when we get into. I mean, we talk mostly about like current affairs and stuff like that, but like last Friday we were just sort of getting into some old school stuff because he's still reading my books, and so a lot of this is kind of new to him, at least what I write about, and so he uses those as sort of show topics. And man, I tell you, the best responses we get are when we go back to like, the 9 rules of Tomasi, the Iron Rules of Tomasi, or we go back to a Burden of Performance, or we go back to something that like I wrote about probably like, 8 years ago. And, and it's, and like he was saying, most of the women agree with it. It's guys that get all pissy and, because they don't, they want to jump up and white knight for womankind and identify, occasionally we'll get the occasional feminist, the rabid feminist will come in there and should just basically rattle off the standard boilerplate they all do.
Yeah.
But,
I'm really impressed at how old school masculine Pat is. I mean, this guy is super badass, like 1940s, like I'm gonna crack your skull if you fuck with me.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be with 13 brothers and sisters, because if you weren't like that, you didn't eat.
Yeah.
I don't know what his schedule's like, but I'd very much like to get him at the 21 convention.
Yeah, I want to talk to him about speaking. I'm very, very open to that idea right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's going on my notes. All right.
Wait, what other questions do we got going on here in the chat?
We got a few more in the private group chat I posted, a group chat. You can read them off if you want. I'm going to type some down here.
Oh, yeah, there was one with the pastor. I missed it where he said what denomination he was from. I'm curious.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
I saw one question in there about blue pilling your friends from a guy called Morpheus Reborn.
Yeah.
And this is one of my things, because I've kind of been sharing this issue I've been having with a coworker of mine whom I unfortunately developed a soft spot for, who is the ultimate blue pill idealist, and he just keeps getting punched in the face, and he's punching himself in the face, and he's not ready to accept the red pill yet. And I've been trying to kind of subtly introduce him to things like, okay, maybe you should start lifting weights. Maybe you should do a Google search for why women aren't working out for you, because I don't want to come straight out to him and tell him like, well, you know what, go read this blog. Then you go read this blog. Then go on Amazon and buy a couple of Rational Male books, read them, annotate them, and then come and ask me if you have any questions, because that's kind of outing yourself, and you really don't want that fire against you in a corporate environment.
Yeah, it's weird. We don't have it as strong in Canada. Obviously, we get the Me Too emails and that too, but at the same time, it's you just gotta. I guess there's a tact involved, but it's compartmentalization. It's like everything. You can't go into meetings and start dropping F-bombs around. You don't walk in there with a T-shirt and jeans. I just find that as long as you keep the same compartmentalization, it's fine. Granted, as soon as you hit the news, all bets are off. At that point, it's just about deflecting bad press. So, yeah, I guess it's you and I kind of know that more than Rollo and Anthony. They've built their own corporation, so it's. To you guys, we're probably speaking Swahili.
Nah, I spent my time in the cubicles too, man.
I've never had a real job other than the one I created out of thin air at 17, so I'm just happy doing that. There's no feminism in this workplace. It's fucking great. I don't have to deal with the soy team, and I can, nobody can fire me, so it's fucking awesome.
Nice.
No, I will tell you that you can get away with, I think the core to being able to be yourself more in a corporate environment, build a competence that is very rare and very valuable, because everyone will accept the asshole if the asshole's a rainmaker. And secondly, authenticity. If people can tell that this is authentically this guy, they will tend to give you a lot less shit for it than if they think this is an act he's putting on. If people know that, that guy throws random shit at everyone, and he's the guy who will drop F-bombs in the conference room regardless of who's in there, you get away with it.
It's consistency,
Yeah.
Same as when people were talking about how Pat was saying once he started red pilling himself, people are asking what's wrong with you, is it a midlife crisis? They don't care as much what you are as opposed to if you're changing, because they have to rewire their mental models for you.
Yeah, they're lazy.
Yeah, when I first got on ship, I had that. It was my first boss, and he said, my first day, and I was just a brand new ordinary seaman. And he goes, first day here, you act like you know what you're doing, and people are going to believe you. And it's been the mantra ever since, like 12, 15 years later, and it's never failed me.
That's one of the problems I have with these guys who want to rely almost entirely on personality types and stuff like that. They think that's you're just born with these personality types and you're set, or maybe you can change them, but it takes a whole lot to change these things. I will tell you right now that neuroplasticity is completely against that idea. I mean, just breaking, like you were saying, even Pat, really, you can be pushed in, just circumstantially, you can be pushed into different ways of thinking and different ways. Like you said, you can question your old beliefs, and then that can change you as a person. That can change your personality, and that's why I think a lot of people who are against the red pill, particularly women, see men changing like that and think, oh well, he used to be such a nice guy and now he's an asshole. It must be this red pill stuff he's taking on. Well, right there, I mean, first of all, it's meant to change your personality. It's meant to change your outlook on life, because you have a new, you've got a new perspective. That's why we call it red pill awareness. That's why we call it unplugging, because you're unplugging from that old thing and you're not the same person again. And I keep telling guys this all the time. So once you have read my books, and they don't even read my books. I mean, just go and be a part of the red pill community and go on Reddit, or just have a red pill friend or something like that. Yeah. It will change your perspective on life, and you cannot help but become somebody different. That's why I constantly tell these guys that, go MGTOW, go MGTOW. No, I'm not saying go MGTOW at all. I'm saying that you cannot help but go your own way, because your outlook, you're going, because you're doing something that the vast majority of guys on this planet are not doing. I mean, just Pareto principle aside, I mean, most guys are blue pill beta guys, and that's just a fact of the world. And
I find the opposite behavior interesting as well, where men, like the PUAs, are, I think, particularly guilty of this. But even regular, normies, so to speak, that find information like this, they want to extract the minimal amount of tactics they can from it to get that one girl or accomplish this one specific goal. Mm-hmm. And they're very reluctant to make deep personality changes. Yeah, well, that was one of the reasons why I think when Athol Kay came out with the Married Man's primer for that book, I used to advise married guys to read that book, because I thought it was pretty good. At least it was based on red pill principles. Now we can get into a really long discussion about the background of Married Man's sex life and Athol Kay. But I think that gradually and progressively, women came into that fold and started changing up that message. And the reason that they did that, the reason so many wives became interested in Athol Kay and Married Man's sex life, is because they saw that change in their husbands. They saw that they were reading this book, or I've got guys that will email me, and I think I've told you guys this story before, where I've got a guy that will email me and says, my girlfriend picked up The Rational Male. She started reading it, and I'm like, okay, what happened? She said that all of the stuff in this book is true, but you shouldn't know any of it. and that because it was revealing all of this stuff, because they're worried that guy is going to change in such a way that he's going to realize that he could get a better deal, or he could be, if I'm telling a guy, here's a good example. If I'm telling a guy, don't be monogamous until you are, probably mid-30s, and then just, experiment with it. Certainly never get married. Certainly never make a long-term commitment until you are in your mid-30s, or just a little bit after that, simply because
that is the most likely time that you are going to be experiencing your sexual market value peak. And I don't mean that in just sexual terms. I mean that at that point in your mid 30s for a guy, that is generally the time at which they're better established. They are still in pretty good shape. They are a better, they have more sexually selective power at that particular point in time. And
The whole package.
and if you look at how blue pill conditioning works for guys, it is to keep them in this sort of suspended state of nice guy right up until women want to get off the cock carousel, right when they're done with their party years. And so that's why I call it the epiphany phase, between 29 and 31 years old. And they are hoping against hope that these guys are still going to be these nice, perfectly docile, but well-educated, well-matured, have a good job kind of guys that they can marry before they get to their midlife or they get to their mid-30s, when they realize that, holy shit, I could have got a better deal. I could have married a better woman. I wouldn't be in this. All these guys that hit me up and say, I wish I would have known this stuff sooner. Those are the guys. Those are the guys who are coming back to me and saying, well, I wish I would have had this. But they getting to a midlife or their mid 30s, and if you can get into that and you can change yourself, you can bring yourself into a new sort of thinking about yourself. That is a threat. That's a big time threat to the blue pill conditioning, of course, but certainly the feminine imperative. And we're seeing a lot of guys become more red pill aware, if not unplugged. And I think that with open hypergamy, examples of this everywhere: open hypergamy, open cuckoldry, all of the things that are going, remove the man, all of these things that are going on in a social sense are waking guys up. And it's not so much even red pill guys that are waking up the most guys. It's just living in this Western society that is a pro-feminine, futurist, female, feminine imperative society is waking these guys up. Now, I think they need to carry that up, to a different, to the next level and really become unplugged. But that's a threat. Their awareness is a threat to that power structure.
I absolutely agree. And I wanted to say that I find it fascinating how extreme at this point and explicit the supremacism is getting. Mm-hmm. I mean, Terry Crews at this point and other celebrities like Hillary Clinton, whether Terry Crews calls masculinity a cult or Hillary Clinton says the future is female, or we get some toxic masculinity rambling analogy, it's like they're demonizing half of the human race or half the people, the men in this country, or, half of the population. It's like, holy shit, you are absolutely assaulting. Yeah.
Well, and and when you got a guy like Terry Crews, you're looking at a guy. I see this constantly. I see guys who are like these.
Dwayne Johnson comes to mind.
Exactly. Right? Dwayne Johnson is another guy. There's other guys who are. I don't want to use. I hate to use celebrities so much because you're pulling them out of the realm of the average guy. But I see guys who are what I call blue pill alphas, and people think that's sort of an oxymoron. No, it's not. You can definitely be a huge blue pill conditioned guy and still be very, very alpha, and still white knight the hell out of people and out of women. I think Terry Crews is a very good example of that, because he's going, for Christ's sake, the guy goes to the women's summit or whatever. I didn't even know this thing existed, and I probably wouldn't if it hadn't been him saying that masculinity is a cult at this thing. And he's telling them, and he's doing exactly what I said in Identity Crisis. He's trying to become more alike. He's trying to align more with that. Because that is that is a way he thinks is going to make him a better person. It's going to make him a better guy. It's going to lift him up if he's saying the things that they want to hear.
And it's ironic because he has a buffer. He's a big, strong, attractive man.
Yeah. And they want
for example, a Pat Stedman up there saying the same thing, and they're going to call him a homosexual and laugh him off the stage.
Yeah,
that's why
he has the alpha
because they can afford to.
It's right. Beta behavior from an alpha male.
That's interesting. Okay, so if we're gonna pick on people, but I was gonna say that the personality, the personality change is one of the reasons. Like when we're talking about like what Pat was saying before he left, guys, when you unplug and when you become red pill aware, you cannot help but live in a different way. You can't go back. You can't unsee the red pill. And that's why I always say, look, you're going to have to deal with it, because even if you put your head in the sand and even if you go into complete denial about red pill awareness, you're still going to see things in your environment going on around you. And you're going to have some guy point out, that the fact that, women get less prison time than guys do. And here's half a dozen different stories. Or here's another example of how men get screwed over in divorce. Here's another example of how hypergamy works. There's all this stuff going on in the periphery, and they can't help but understand that. Now, what that does is that's going to change those guys' personality. It's going to change their outlook. And that, I think, is one of the reasons why so many wives got involved with Apple K, and why so many women in this spinster generation, when we're looking at women between, like we're looking at never married or divorcee women. That's why do you think that, we talked about this on the last show, why do you think that Evan Mark Katz, Mark Manson, Pat Stedman, what's the other guy? There's another dude that
Tucker Max.
Tucker Max. Well, Tucker Max is a wannabe of these guys. But you these pretty boy guys.
You can't even get that right.
Yeah.
Oh.
With the exception of maybe like Pat Stedman, you got these pretty boy guys that these women they're thinking, oh, if I could just find a guy like Evan Mark Katz, if I could just find a guy like Mark Manson, and they get married and they take on this really pro-feminine, pro-female, theme that they never had before. And they represent this guy that is, he's woke enough so he'll know exactly how to please me, and he's telling guys how to be better guys, and they want to believe that the red pill is going to change these guys to the point where they're going to be these misogynistic assholes who are going to just use this automatically to make the lives of women worse. And I was telling Pat before he left, I said that there's the Tradcon women, the red pill women side of things, really want there to be some sort of responsibility to red pill guys. They want the red pill guys to say, okay, we got you. We understand the game. We know how to play it. We know how to just get it now. We know all this stuff. So women say, okay, you got us. Now it's on you. Now you have to make good decisions with this. Now you have to use your superpowers for good and not for evil. And it's like
by what standard? By what standard? The standard of woman, rather than
exactly. So again, and this is what I meant by the assimilation of the red pill into a feminine primary way of like male space. Like a red pill is definitely a male space. It is women infiltrating into that male space of the red pill and saying, yeah, this is.
Oh, we just lost Rollo.
I think Rollo just disconnected.
That's fine. I think I know where you're going with that.
The end of Rollo Tomasi.
Yeah. Well, the thing he was talking about was congruence tests. When she gives you the reins, at that point it's like, all right, big boy, you're the man, take the reins. And she'll shit test the fuck out of you, and that's fine.
Oh,
but that's the thing. A lot of these guys,
I got cut off. Sorry.
Yeah, so I was just kind of leading into that with the paper alphas, where they do all the right things, so she gives them the reins, and then they just fuck it up. You kind of have to own that. So when you were saying to be the better plow horse, well, then you decide what that means.
Well, then the message doesn't become the red pill anymore. It becomes whatever women want to say that it is, and I think that is the most dangerous part of this bastardization of the red pill right now. Is that it's people saying, okay, here's my ideology and I must be right. So it's red pill. And therefore, if it's true, then I'm red pill. And they're trying to pick up on that branding. That's one of the things that's one of the reasons I got so bent about A Voice for Men and the MRAs using the red pill.
Rollo, your voice is a little, the volume's a little bit lower than usual.
How about now? I'm going to lift it. Is that good?
You're good. Yeah, you're good.
That's good. That's good.
But using that as their own personal moniker or adopting the red pill, whereas before they were very much against anything that would have been red pill or anything that would have been associated with
putting on a Rollo skin suit to pretend to be a man. Fucking embarrassing.
Right. Well, and then I think that's really important. So if you are new to this, if you are a guy who's just coming into red pill awareness, like Pat, for example, Pat is, I've only been talking with Pat for probably the last month and a half, 2 months. I consider him a fairly newly unplugged guy. I mean, he's pretty much conventionally masculine to begin with, but he just doesn't. He just never had it articulated for him, and so he's picking this up now. But I think that it's really important for guys who are not quite crossing that abyss like we were talking before, and they don't want to go all the way. They don't want to, they still want to cling to those blue pill ideals. They still want to have that. Well, I can still have the white picket fence and the Disney, love you forever soulmate mythology. It can still have those goals, but really I'm red pill and I know what's going on. No, you're not. And you need to accept it in its full rather than, go on board with somebody who's going to market to you and market to your idealism and market to your blue pill comfort zone, as opposed to really understanding what's going on.
It's important to keep in mind too that the red pill is open source and decentralized kind of community. So there is room to always improve.
Yes.
But there's good command over that. I love guys like Ryan that moderate the red pill, and as an author you do well too on your own, leading it.
I try.
Well, I think the whole problem is that it becomes a marketing thing, and what you realize is if you market purely towards what Pat said our demographic is, men 20 to 40, that's a much smaller market than women and men 20 to 40. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why a lot of the people who rely on selling hours or coaching or help try to appeal to women as well, because they know that women will drag their men to couples counseling or to help or whatever. And at the same time, asking for female opinions and perspectives in the red pill is like asking the salmon for perspectives on bait.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't ask the salmon for how you fish salmon. You observe the salmon, and then you decide on your strategy for becoming a better fisherman.
Yeah, or you talk to the fisherman,
Well, I think, and then you got guys like I said who find the red pill, and they'll find my books, they'll read my books, and they'll make it, they'll internalize it, they'll internalize the information, but they don't want to make that, they don't want to cross that. They, like we were talking about before, they get angry or they go into this nihilism. And I think that what we're seeing right now is this profiteering or this marketeering on the parts of life coaches who want to say, hey, look, I know you're angry, but you don't have to be, because not all of that's true. And let me tell you, let me placate to your idealism.
Yeah, Pat Stedman was particularly guilty of that just a week ago on Twitter. I saw just totally trying to hop, steal, like theft from the red pill. The red pill's right, except where my coaching comes in.
It's pick and pull.
Yeah, and then he describes exactly what the fuck we were talking about anyway.
Yeah. Well, and then I'm seeing sort of. I mean, I mentioned names. I mentioned Evan Mark Katz. There's another guy that Rich mentioned. I really wish I could remember his name now. I think it was Massey or something like that. But again, these guys who go, and if you go and you look at their Alexa stats, I mean, they have like such a huge female demographic following. It's like, who is this information really for? Is it to make women feel better about possibly being able to find their own ideal chick or their own ideal guy? Or is it about, blue pill guys wanting to, have a better marriage or whatever, or wanting to have a better, have a better relationship or even find a relationship? And honestly, I think what it is it's sort of a regression. The purple pill is definitely a regression. And a lot of people think, oh, I only use purple pill as a derogatory, in a derogatory sense. I don't. I'm using that as a clinical examination of it. What it is it's guys who still want to cling to that blue pill ideals. They still want to think that, they're the things they learned when they were a 5-year-old kid in Disney movies is still going to be possible for them with red pill knowledge. And I keep telling guys, I said, you need to unlearn the idea that you can achieve blue pill goals in a red pill paradigm. You're not going to do that with red pill awareness.
I have no idea how people don't see that, because just look at a photo from Rollo when you had yours from when you were in your band back in your heyday, first red pilled, and then you go look at somebody who's drinking fine wines at 130 pounds soaking wet, and you tell me, like, are you willing to pay money to be a man? Well, fucking which archetype you gonna pick?
Right.
Guys, one thing I wanted to hit on as we we'll wind on the show in a little bit here. We're still not quite there yet. But a really good question just came in that I think Rollo should address, and the rest of us can provide some commentary as well. The question was from Red Pill University. What is so controversial about the rational male that Stefan Molyneux wouldn't allow it on his show? And for some background, Rollo... go ahead, Rollo.
I was going to say, of course, you're going to put me on the spot for Stefan. I did a...
I'm happy to hop in too.
I was going to say, I really wish I knew. I like Stefan. I don't think anybody would find any differences quite so different between what I say and what he's talking about when it comes to men's issues. I think that I did, just to clear the air here, I did an interview with Stefan back in February, and the first time I ever even had any kind of contact with Stefan was him giving me a private chat or private message on Twitter and asked me if I would come on the show. And I said, yeah, sure, I'd love to. And so we set that up, but I was setting it up with whoever's producer is or whoever the people are that he has like handling his show. And so I, right up until the moment that he came on my computer monitor, I'd never met the guy before at all. And so I'm not sure that he's even read my book all the way through. But I guess that I was somebody who wanted to get on because he wanted to get back into doing more men's issues because he's really more political and more ideologically focused these days than he used to be when it comes to intersexual dynamics. So I talked with him. We talked to him for about an hour, and I thought it was great. I mean, we had a really good, I thought it was really positive, talk. I mean, we talked pretty much a lot about the rational male and a lot of the social stuff that was going on. This was at the time when, I was getting into school shootings and how boys were being raised as defective girls. That we're getting into that quite a bit. And like I said, it was actually a pretty short interview. And then I never heard anything from him. And I, about 2 weeks later, I emailed his handler, whoever the producer guy is, and he said, well, we usually sit on these interviews until they are like socially relevant or until that's the hot thing to be talking about, right? And I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. And I just sort of left it at that. And the people who knew that I had the interview with Stefan were saying, hey, where's the interview? I really want to see that. I want to see how it went. And I don't know where, as far as I know, he's not gonna produce it. And I don't really know why. I didn't think there was anything all that controversial in our discussion.
Well, let me add this, just my own independent.
So weird.
Yeah. Well, my personal opinion, I don't, and so a lot of people view Stefan as like, he's super red pill, he's a red pill and all these things, every fucking topic they can think of. When it comes to intersexual dynamics, I do not think he's red pill. He's somewhere between purple pill and red pill, but he's not all the way there. And if you look at his videos on hypergamy and things like that, you'll see that. He shames men and he'll shame them into getting married and like all these different things.
Yeah, he's very much a Tradcon in the respect that he expects guys to and I was gonna say he has some very popular YouTube videos of him saying, shaming like pickup artists or saying, it's because of guys like you that, that we're in the mess we're in. And a good example, I guess, of what we were talking about earlier, how it is all on men to be responsible and to use their superpowers for good. Now, we didn't really even talk about that when we were in my interview with him. We were talking more about social issues and men and, men in general and social issues. But we brought up hypergamy, we brought up solipsism, we brought up a few other things that I think were, from my perspective, I think are pretty controversial if you look at it from a traditional conservative point of view. But yeah, I mean, he's actually a very good example of one of these guys who believes that the salvation of Western culture relies in guys getting married and sacking up and taking their responsibilities and or traditional, old social convention or old social contract rules. And that's going to save modern humanity. And I'm definitely not of that same opinion. I mean, I think it's great that people get married. I'm thinking, hey, if you can make it work, fine. But the thing is that today it is just such a risk. I mean, half the reason we were talking about the
Rollo,
issues
hang on
we
a
got
second.
into, the reason we talked about the reason we talked about the issues we got into were exactly because of the divorce industry that I warn against all the time.
Rollo, I wanted to ask, so you said, you're fine with people getting married and, you hope it works out or maybe they can make it work. But do you really mean marriage or do you mean family formation specifically?
Oh, definitely family formation. I think that, I constantly get asked, people say, well, how can you be married for as long as you have been and still be, all the books I've written while I was married. Okay. I use a lot of my old, rock star.
Your wife, by the way, is very proud of your work explicitly.
Yeah, very much.
Awesome.
She looks up to me. She admires me, and you guys have all met my wife. So, but she's on board with that. My daughter as well. And I don't think that anything that I, get into is really anti-family, but it's definitely anti-marriage because I think that in this day and age, there's no advantage for guys getting married. There's no financial, reason. There's no personal reason. I got married because it seemed like a good idea at the time, and it turned out right. And I think if you are going to get married, you definitely need to be red pill aware, and you definitely need to be on top of, you need to have red pill awareness internalized as part of your own personality. Then I would say, okay, if you're going to make the best of what is potentially a really, really bad situation, you at least need to be red pill and understand how it works within a marriage. Okay. And if for no other reason, that you need to protect your ass, because like I constantly say, women can go feral at any time. They can go feral. It's not that all women will do that. It's that any women could do that. So it's like, the opportunity for a woman to completely detonate the family and completely destroy that zero out that guy, that is always within the realm of possibility, because it is always an avenue that is available to any woman at any time. Now, does that mean that all women are going to do that? No, I don't think that at all. I think especially if you've got a good red pill aware, solid relationship where you're based on traditional gender role, conventional gender roles, and you have an understanding between the man and the woman, and that it is founded on, I would say, red pill principles, great. But I would say that I would never advise, and even to this day, I still say to guys, don't get married, because it is absolutely 100% too dangerous to do so. It's too dangerous, but from a family formation side of things, and it's too dangerous from a guy getting zeroed out side of things as well. And there's never, you have the legal system and you have the social system that is always going to back up the woman. The man will always be at fault. So I cannot possibly endorse modern marriage in the sense that you're talking about right now.
Well, that's the thing. You were saying that. It's like people saying, well, not all guns are loaded, so point it at you. Like, no, you treat them all as loaded, and then you walk it back after you've done some tests. Right. But I just want to, it's the first I've heard of this Molyneux thing. So let me see if I understand this correctly. And I'm going to phrase it in the least charitable way possible. So you talking about the red pill and hypergamy stuff was too much for a guy who went on camera and talked about how race and IQ mattered, tackled the Jewish question.
Yeah.
But the guy who's like, yeah, women like to find the best male possible and treat you as disposable, was like, hey, we can't really touch that because it might be a little edgy.
That may be too much. Yeah. And from what I'm just going to throw this out there because I don't know just to hedge my bet here. I don't know the truth of this, but I do know that his wife is a psychologist, and I do know that
I know that little drama.
His wife is very involved in him being Stefan.
Okay.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
So it is very possible that my discussion with Stefan was something that maybe I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. They both collectively decided that should not be out there on his channel.
Well, we're going to change that. Carl, do you want to hop in?
Well, Rollo kind of talked on the psychological and the social aspect, so I thought I'd throw some economics in there, because the one thing I find very interesting is that the Tradcon perspective and the global multinational industrial complex, which makes me sound like a conspiracy theorist by even using that word, have some aligned interests, because what we find ourselves in is kind of like a government-created catch-22, because women in the workplace, that created a situation where you double the labor force overnight. At the same time, you kind of screwed up the long-term birth rate, because a woman who's in school until she's 25 and then wants to spend 3 to 5 years in the workforce before getting married has a really short fertility window. Like most women, if you go back a generation or two, started having children at 20. Now women start having children at 30. If that continues, we will have to in vitro fertilize women at 40 in the next generation, and that will mean at most 2 kids per woman. And that means that every politician.
My grandmother had my uncle at 16 years old, and that was like totally normal back then.
Yeah.
I went on to have more children after that.
I should also put a caveat on that last bit there. I do think that family generation is important. I do think that some sort of pair bonding. Obviously, that's been really good for the human species for a very, very long time. What I'm saying is, a modern marriage today is far too dangerous for men to get involved in. That's not to say that there are no advantages to, from a social scale perspective, that it's good that we have family formation. I think so, and I think because it's so good, I think that should emphasize the danger of the society, the feminine primary society that we're in right now, which is the fact that it's very, people want to say, well, if I'm saying don't get married, right? I'm seeing that from a practical, pragmatic perspective. But when women are saying don't get married, when feminists are saying it's slavery, when feminists have made their case against marriage, it is with the direct purpose of destroying the family unit, destroying, really, I mean, what has Western society been built on? It's built on a family unit. It's been on, that, granted, hypergamy works its way in there and finds ways around that, monogamy. But I'm not saying that the family unit, I'm not saying that, marriage can't be a good thing. It can be. I'm just saying under the present circumstances that it is today, it is not. And I think that since the sexual revolution, feminism has done its damnedest to make sure that it has destroyed the family unit. Now we can go and we can talk about Marxism and all, socialism and all the, the Rockefeller.
Yeah, you recommended a great book to me, Rollo, the other week. What was the name of it? That book you sent me? It was awesome. I read through it very quickly.
Which one?
It was on Twitter. It was really good. Yeah, it was. I didn't even read the title because I just burned through the book like literally the minute I bought it. The one on feminism, its relation to Marxism.
Mm-hmm. I must have passed that on. I can't remember.
Oh man, I'm gonna find it real quick. It was fucking good.
Yeah, there's there's a lot that has been written about the socialist and Marxist influences in. I mean, people want to say it's third wave feminism, but it's really been part of feminism for a whole lot longer than Marxism has been around. But there's a school of thought that says that feminism is a social engineering experiment to destabilize Western civilization. Because what do? You go and you disempower men. You disempower. That's why the patriarchy is such a big thing to feminism. Because if you can destroy that, you destroy the family unit. And I think that we're at a point right now in Western culture where we are seeing the results of that destruction. That's why you got a guy like Terry Crews.
That was 20 years ago.
That's why you have Terry Crews.
Way too late.
That's why Terry Crews he sounds very rational, saying that masculinity is a cult. Why? Why does it sound right? Because we've been trained for the last 50 plus years to think that patriarchy is bad. Masculinity is toxic. Masculinity is hyper. Masculinity is a cult. I mean, is that the next thing we're going to talk about? Where it's not so much about the empowerment of women as it is the disempowerment of men, which is why we see them trying to remove men from language. We try to see them removed from even just public discourse. Just having the 21 Convention is something that just men getting together. I mean, just us four here. I mean, once a week, that is threatening. That is threatening to the feminine imperative.
It is. Like, I hear they keep taking away Anthony's monetization. I'm like, Jesus, man. Like, is it my drinking or swearing?
It lasted one day. We had monetization, and then they immediately cut it off. So,
yeah, I got to drink better brands. I don't know. That's why I switched to bourbon. So it'd be like Pro America. That's MAGA.
Eventually, we'll switch to our own platforms, guys. We're going to expand. I want to actually mention that for future shows, I have some announcements to make before we end the show. The next time we host this should be about 2 weeks from now on Saturday, 1 p.m. Just like the show's going on every Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And we're going to start multi-streaming it to multiple platforms off YouTube. So we'll do this YouTube channel, maybe Richard's at the same time, Entrepreneurs in Cars, and then Twitter, Facebook, and even more like Gab beyond that. So in the future, you guys can actually watch it live, not just on YouTube, but other platforms too.
Cool.
We're also going to get call-ins. I'm going to work on that. That might not be in the next show, but it's definitely coming soon. That'll be live call-ins where you guys can actually call in and get your voice on the air. And we'll have more guests, obviously, over time. I'm really glad Rollo invited Pat on today. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
I just want to make a quick announcement here. I think we're looking for I think new guests as well. I like to keep mixing up the it doesn't always have to be me on here. I mean, it can be you guys and somebody else, or it can be Rich and whoever. We're trying to mix up sort of the lineup. I mean, I'm glad it's me, you, and Ryan and everybody, but I really want as this has developed into the show that it is right now, I really want to be able to present a lot of different aspects of the red pill. I mean, I just did an interview with AJ Cortez. I would very much like to bring him on.
Oh yeah, he's in speak this year too.
Yeah, there's a lot of
He's
guys.
the reason I picked this name.
Yeah, we've had Goldman on before. I would very much like to get Christian McQueen. There's a lot of guys that I'm in contact with, or who are either my readers or I read them, that I would very much like to get them involved in just doing something like this and talking about particular subjects and all that. But yeah, and another guy that I'm debating right now. I ran this by you, and I'll just make a public announcement that I would very much like to get Tristan Tate on here, and I don't know what you guys think about that, but I really want to get Tristan on here a lot.
I'm excited because
I know, and Ryan's laughing because that is going to set off so many blue pill butthurt guys on.
Let's do it. More than Donovan Sharp. Donovan really rounds people up.
100% more.
Donovan's great. Donovan's great. Nothing.
Tristan Tate is like what Tucker Max would be if he wasn't an asshole, but like in a. I mean, asshole in the sense that now he's like a bitch.
Shit.
I think he would provide a very unique perspective with regard to what we're talking about.
Dude, double it up with him and Christian McQueen there.
I would very much like to do that. I would like to do an all game show at some point where we're just doing. I mean, we've done it before, really, but we had Goldman. on. I'd really like to sort of have them go at it for the state of modern pickup.
Guys, keep talking. I cannot hear you. Just 1 second.
Well, we're still live. We're still going. I think it should be all right.
I still like that, man. 21 convention when I met Christian. I remember just sitting there. I'm like, look, I'm willing to listen as long as you're willing to run your mouth. And that was all he needed. He went on for like an hour and a half.
And I think that this collection of guys has a lot of potential with regard to sort of defining what the red pill is from a intersexual dynamic perspective.
Oh, I got audio. Oh shit, sort of.
Finally.
Oh yeah, you're totally right. Because they just
guys, I gotta.
they're not analyzing.
I can't hear you guys talking shit. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Oh,
you can hear me.
Clearly.
That's
You're very
now here at the end, right? But, yeah, I would really like to get I'd really like to get some call-ins here so that we can have people voice their opinion. I've always been about free Discord. I mean, if you go to my site, it's all I've always had an unmoderated blog. I came from a forum. I came from the SoSwab forum, and it's always been a back and forth. And I'd really like we could take questions here, but it's so much better if we can just get people live and talking on this.
That's all it is. Yeah, it's guys swapping notes. Guys are supposed to talk to each other. That's the whole point. The whole thing we've been prevented to shut down of doing is just sitting around with other guys and talk.
Right.
Yeah.
It's such a simple but such a profound thing.
Guys, let's wind down for today. It's been about 2 hours. I'm also out of audio for now. Gentlemen, thanks for hopping on the show. Rolo, Ryan, Carl, appreciate it very much. And Pat earlier. Everyone watching live, make sure you click the full video description underneath this video. You're actually going to see all the links to these to the guests today. I'll put Pat's in there too now. Make sure you visit their sites, buy their books, support them wherever they have stuff going on. Very much appreciated. For those of you who dropped in super chats, the 21 Studios, very much appreciated. And I'll see you guys in 2 weeks at 1 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. Also tune in live next Saturday, and it should be on Richard Cooper's channel at youtube.com/entrepreneurs and cars.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys, for tuning in.
And don't forget that next week we'll be with Rich. So
yeah, exactly. Yep. I'll put a link in there too to that. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We're gonna hop off the live stream.